entry.
Which one is it?
217.
Man, can you get to the door?
Step inside.
You okay?
Watch out, sir.
Where's who at?
You got a call for an overdose.
I wasn't an
Back up.
overdose.
Hey.
It was just.
Back up.
I was just nervous because my husband.
Where's he at?
We made entry.
Where's your husband?
He's fine now.
Where is he?
Where is he?
He left. He left.
Who's in the bathroom?
Open the door now!
He didn't respond
Out.
to me.
That way.
That way.
Let's see on the bed.
You deal with that, I'll deal with this.
There's white powder on the table.
At this point, entry's already been made into the room. Sergeant Pitts and Officer Tiernan had left to go get a search warrant, and we're just holding the room for the search warrant to be obtained so we can execute it. The female's on the bed. She's complaining that she has quote-unquote allergies, so she needed to blow her nose. I went to get her a towel because I had knocked the box of tissues into the toilet. I gave her a towel, and I'm just standing there watching him, just documenting it and waiting for the search warrant. Pearsall lets her blow her nose. She does that several times, and I'm watching the male suspect just with his eyes rolling back in his head, making sure he's breathing okay and he's not going to fall out. Because at this point, I only have 2 doses of Narcan for 4 people. And prior to this, I asked for the rescue squad and the fire department to stage outside in case I needed them because I knew they had more. And by this time, I believe that we were told that Officer Tiernan had passed out at the police department and was given Narcan there and was being transported to the hospital. Notice my partner, I didn't pay attention at the time, but as you see in the video, he just continues to look around. I thought he was doing the same thing that I was. And over by the toilet, you can't see it, but there's a book bag with needles poking out of it and empty jeweler's bags and white powder on the ground between the sink and the toilet. As at this point, my partner said his vision was going in and out. He felt like the room was getting smaller and it was harder for him to breathe, so I moved him out of the way. I'm by myself now with 2 people that are experiencing some sort of possible medical emergency from whatever substance is inside and another suspect. Those 2 are in handcuffs. I'm trying to keep him awake and call into dispatch, which amazingly the male suspect who's been nodding in and out now seems to be alert and oriented and paying attention to what's going on for the first time for at least an hour. I'm telling him to breathe. He's having a difficulty standing, so I've got my hands underneath his vest. I'm trying to keep him upright, make sure I'm safe. He couldn't stand anymore and I couldn't hold him up. I've been trying to call dispatch to get somebody up there from the fire department because he was obviously starting to go downhill rapidly. His breath started getting more and more labored. It was hard for him to stay awake or conscious, so I'm still trying to talk to him, still hollering in the radio that I need help. I remember flipping the door latch open to keep the door from shutting behind me. I set him down. At this point, I think he's overdosing. He had his own personal Narcan, so I took that from him and gave it to him. Now I've got my partner with medical personnel, and I'm just standing here securing the room and waiting for my supervisor to tell me what to do.
take your time and slow down. If you rush, you'll make small mistakes, and those could cost you. For instance, my respirator was hung up on my camera mount, and it didn't create the proper seal.
We purchased P100 respirators for every police officer and had them tested and gave them training on the use of those respirators. We implemented new policy as it comes to donning the respirators. For any incident where there is a suspected heroin or fentanyl or illicit drugs, the officers are now required to don their respirators in safety, as well as protective gloves and other PPE, and to have an officer present while any of that evidence is being collected.
At the end of the day, if you can't get there and help somebody, it doesn't do you any bit of good, and it doesn't do that person any bit of good. So if you get exposed to it and you're laying on the ground next to them, what does that help?
One of the other things that we really haven't practiced a lot, but I think worked well on that scene, was the integration with the fire department and police department. I think because we are small agencies and we see each other on a constant basis, that helped play into that unified command role that day. But as we progress and move forward, I think that unification of running incidents will only make our responses stronger in the future.
You should follow established work practices as well as these recommendations when illicit drugs are known or suspected to be present. When arriving at a scene, analyze the incident, assess the risk for hazards, and determine whether illicit drugs are suspected to be present. There are standard safe work practices you can take to protect yourself if you know or suspect illicit drugs are present. Safe work practices. Do not eat, drink, smoke, or use the bathroom while working in the area. Even if you're wearing gloves, don't touch your eyes, mouth, or nose after touching any surface potentially contaminated with illicit drugs. Avoid performing tasks or operations that may aerosolize the illicit drugs. Wash your hands with soap and water immediately after a potential exposure and after leaving the scene. Do not use hand sanitizer. Illicit drugs, including fentanyl, pose a potential hazard to a variety of responders, such as law enforcement and emergency response personnel. There is a chance that responders may come into contact with illicit drugs, such as fentanyl, during the course of their daily activities.
You should receive training in conducting an on-scene risk assessment related to illicit drugs and demonstrate an understanding of the following: how to recognize the form and determine the quantity of illicit drugs, when to use PPE, what PPE is necessary, how to properly put on, use, take off, properly dispose of, and maintain PPE, and the limitations of PPE, what the potential exposure routes are for illicit drugs, how to recognize the signs and symptoms of an exposure, when and how to seek medical help.
NIOSH has identified 3 levels of potential exposure: minimal, moderate, and high. Exposure levels are defined as follows. Minimal exposure situation. Response to a situation where it is suspected that illicit fentanyl or other illicit drugs may be present, but no drugs are visible. In this situation, NIOSH recommends that you wear nitrile gloves. Moderate exposure situation. Response to a situation where small amounts of illicit fentanyl or other illicit drugs are visible. In this situation, NIOSH recommends that you wear nitrile gloves, arm protection, a disposable N, P, or R100 filtering facepiece respirator, or a reusable elastomeric N, P, or R100 respirator, and protective eyewear. High exposure situation. Response to a situation where liquid fentanyl or large amounts of fentanyl products are visible. Example: a fentanyl storage or distribution facility, fentanyl milling operation, or fentanyl production laboratory. In this situation, NIOSH recommends responders do not enter the area. Entry into these situations requires additional PPE and training per your department's policy. Decontamination. If you or a coworker suspect that you have come into contact with illicit drugs, you should do the following. Immediately exit the scene. Alert your supervisor or dispatch according to your department's policy. Remove contaminated clothing. Be careful not to disturb areas of contamination and launder according to your department's policy. Shower immediately with soap and water. If a shower is not possible, use soap and water to thoroughly wash and rinse the contaminated skin while in a clean environment. Avoid breaking the skin when washing and rinsing, and cover all open wounds. Do not use hand sanitizers or bleach solutions to clean contaminated skin. Store reusable PPE in a labeled durable 6 ml polyethylene bag until it can be safely decontaminated according to the manufacturer's recommendations. And place contaminated single-use PPE in labeled durable 6 ml polyethylene bags and dispose of appropriately.
This year has been an uptick, if you will, for us in the amount of opioid responses, as well as, I guess, across the country. So don't think it won't happen to you, because it's just a matter of, it's not when it's, or if, it's when it's going to happen to you, because it will.